Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Good Bit Podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. And this week's episode is all about the 1986 classic. It is the sequel to Aliens. No, it's the sequel to Alien, not Aliens. That would be just completely confused everybody listening so far. We're not talking about the first one. We're talking about the sequel. They should have just called it Alien 2. We wouldn't have had this disaster. I'm assuming, everyone else has this mistake all the time, but right now it's no mistake, because as you can see, if you're watching the video version, we have clearly a fan of the film franchise joining us, but if you're listening to the audio, thank you very much for downloading. But yeah, we're on video form now. I feel weird doing this like on video, filming myself and talking as if I'm not filming myself, because usually I'm like talking to the camera. But ladies and gents, I am joined by someone who I've been wanting to get on not only the podcast, but the YouTube channel for many a year. One of my longest, if not longest, YouTube friends. And yeah, so welcome to Luke onto the Good Bit Podcast, which is amazing. But the main thing, welcome for the first time to CM42 TV. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm tired, but I'm glad to be here. And as you say, it's long overdue.
Yeah.
I can't believe we haven't done something at least on your channel. We did the one thing on mine a couple of years ago, I think it was. But yeah, it's definitely a long time coming.
That was fun, the video we did on your channel. I also, I think I sent you a couple of things for one of your marathons and...
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
The seasons you were doing on the YouTube channel and stuff. How's everything going on the channel? I feel like that's one of the first questions that we should chat about, since that's how we kind of met. So how's the channel going?
It's pretty, I don't want to say dormant, but it's been a little bit staggered lately. I've just been very busy with other things.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding the older I get, the more real life responsibilities creep in, and I'm not able to post a video every day like I normally did. Yeah. But in previous years, but it's going all right. I'm enjoying just, finding the time. Like it used to be, I just film, but now it's like whenever I get the chance to and the time to, it feels like more of a special. I got a video done. So it's like it's almost more satisfying like that. But it's going all right. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a while that I was doing that. I was just like filming 5 videos in the one go and thinking, okay, that's it. There's a week's worth or at least a couple of weeks worth of videos. But then you got to the point where that was taking like an hour to an hour and a half or even more. And then it became a thing like I had to do, and I never wanted that. I never wanted it to be like a chore or something that I felt as if had to get done. I wanted it to continue being the fun hobby that I was doing for so long, Yeah. I mean, we started speaking in 2011, I believe, because that's when I started the CM42 TV channel, which is crazy to think that was 10 years ago or 11 years ago coming on now. And we've been chatting ever since. We've been talking about going on the podcast and doing things, but this is your first time here. I know this is a big moment for you, so relax and we'll just chat about one of your favorite films.
Yeah, definitely.
But
yeah, I have enjoyed the podcast over the years as well. When I lived in Norway, I used to love getting an episode of The Good Bit and just taking a stroll around the local forest and just listening to the old podcast. No, it's really good. I like the conversational tone of it. And I think I told you once, like, it was funny. There was one episode you were doing something, chatting to some people about something or another, and you're just like, should I close the window? Should I leave it open? And you're like, you hear you leaning over and like closing a window or something. And I thought, I love that you left that in. Like, it just, it's something most people cut out, and it kind of, I don't know, adds a bit more to the kind of
the charm of it.
The charm of it, like you're actually sat in the room with the people talking. So I like that stuff.
I would like to say it probably was like a purposeful thing. Like, yes, I'm going to leave that in to add to the conversational style of the podcast. It could have just been laziness,
That has happened to me.
Yes, you just do one take wonders and then you just let the whole thing in. And well, because I've been doing this other podcast, The Wrestling Connection, and that was like, we did that for every single week for a good 70 weeks, I think, 71 weeks. We did it every single week. And I got to the point where, when I started, I was listening to every episode back, going through every second of the podcast, turning some moments down and adding in the wee jingles that we do and stuff. And now it's just, we've done so many of them. I'll just, if I can remember if I made a mistake, I'll try and edit it out. But it's good to just kind of like let it flow. Sometimes too much editing is too much editing, especially with videos as well. One of my favorite videos to watch on YouTube is just the ones that are like, all right, we're just sitting down, we're having a conversation, whether it's one person talking to the camera or, a couple of people talking. I like the kind of, the charm of that, like the kind of subtlety of just having a conversation, which I think both of us have done over the years,
Yeah. And I remember like when I first, maybe a year after I started YouTube, looking at different ways of presenting my videos, and I did slip a little bit into just testing out the old, cutting out all the gaps in the
Right.
you know, like it's just like, so anyway, I did it, and it just feels like the person is not taking a breath, you know, like relax,
Yeah.
you know. So I look back on those, I shouldn't have done that really, but it was, you know, it's all a learning curve, I suppose, when you're making videos, especially in the early days of making your own videos on your channel and stuff and finding your own way of doing it. But yeah, I definitely, like you, prefer the more,
Yeah.
you know, straight up kind of stuff.
I think we both had channels when when YouTube first became a thing, like in the mid 2000s. I mean, I was a child at the time. I'm assuming you were like a teenager, but like it's crazy.
Yeah,
to think
2006. So I was
right.
18.
I'm not even going to tell you what age I was in 2006. And, you know, but the videos I was making were things like videos of me and my friends and stuff. It wasn't until a few years later where I was like sitting down like this and chatting to the camera. And definitely both our channels have evolved over time. And, you know, you just have to change with the times and change with your interests, I think. And it was around 2012, 2013 sort of time where I was kind of gravitating more towards not just wrestling. It was more like we're doing films and we're doing some day in the life style videos and things like that. And that's actually when I first saw Aliens, or Alien was the first one I watched. I got this set. I looked this out. This was the set that I got in about 2012. It's not the big fancy box that I think you have. It's just the standard case. But it was one of the first like movie sets that I got like a chronology of films in the one go. And I always felt it was like a big thing. So that's kind of why I always liked the first two Alien films, because still to this day, the first two are the only ones I've seen.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
maybe we could do a couple of follow-up episodes. I mean, I'm intrigued to hear what you think about 3 and 4, because they're different.
Are they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I mean, even 1 and 2 are quite different in some ways, you know.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But I don't want to jump the gun. I've got a couple of questions I thought I'd run by you first before we crack into the actual main theme of the episode. My first question is something I want to ask as many people as possible on the podcast, because I enjoy the story. I like the answers of this particular one, and it's just about your first experience going to the cinema. I always like hearing these stories. I know you've spoke about it on your channel before, because I remember vaguely listening to you talk about this before, but you've not said it on the podcast before, so let's hear it.
I don't know really. Like I know my first memory of being in the cinema, but there's not really much of a story to it, and that was Beauty and the Beast. So that was like 91. I was about 3 or 4 years old, I think. My nan used to take me to the cinema a lot, or the pictures, as she calls it. Yeah. And you know, so my nan would, like, my dad every now and then would take me. My mum would never take me. So for me, it was me and my nan. That was kind of what we used to do together. She'd go to the pictures on the weekend. So, and the Disney films are probably the kind of things she'd take me to see. And I just remember being in the cinema and seeing the opening shot of like a landscape view of the castle as the kind of the prologue begins and the story set. I just remember that's it. But an early memory, which would be 93, so I was 5 years old, and I do remember this fairly clearly, was going to see, well, first of all, I remember being at my dad's house and he was looking in the paper, because that's what you used to do back then, is look in the paper to see what's on in the cinema.
A newspaper, what is that?
And of course, 1993, what was the big film that year? Jurassic Park. And I was terrified. I was so scared of seeing this film. I didn't want to go see it. My dad was like, I want to see Jurassic. No, just please no. So we settled on the Super Mario Brothers movie, which is an infamous movie. You have a famous epic classic. Wow. I mean, you know, I haven't revisited it. That's one I should probably do for a video or something. It's like, yeah. So we went to see Super Mario Brothers, the movie. And well, I was going to say, if you've seen the film, obviously you haven't, but the opening, I forget what it is exactly, but there's some kind of like opening sequence with like a dinosaur, basically. And I was sat there thinking, hang on, because my dad was the type to do this sort of thing. And I looked over and my dad just like elbowed me going, we are seeing, and he leaned into it. He saw the perfect opportunity to scare me. And I was like, no. And then obviously I realized, oh, it is Super Mario Brothers. But that's all I really remember, was just the fake out with thinking it was going to be Jurassic Park and being terrified. But yeah, that's probably, I'd put that as my first couple of cinema memories.
Listen, in film history, you know, we talk about the greatest films ever made. It goes, you know, Jurassic Park, Aliens, and then there's the Super Mario Brothers movie, you know. So what a great film to start with. Mine was Monsters, Inc. That was the first one I saw in 2001. And I said that, I mean, I'm asking everybody for these like stories and stuff, and I'm just going to tell my story every single time. I remember jumping up and down on the on like the different, obviously it must have been an empty cinema, but you know, in the way like some cinemas have like the slabs in between, you know, the different aisles and the different
Yeah.
rows,
Yeah.
but these were like big steps that you could go on. And I was just like jumping and doing forward rolls and cartwheels and stuff on these things. And I mean, I'm someone that like hates when people, you know, disturb you in the cinema these days. That's me as a young child, just being so innocent. Clearly, you know, Monsters Inc. is a great film. It's actually one of my favorite, you know, Pixar films. But at the time, I must not have been as interested as maybe other people would be. But even like as a young boy, surely like, dinosaurs would have been something that you were interested in seeing, as you know, for Jurassic Park, or was it just more of you thought it was like a horror film?
No, I don't know what I loved dinosaurs when I was a kid.
Right.
Obviously not at that point. It must have been a year or two later. Because and this actually sparked my love of filmmaking. My uncle made a film with my two cousins, Adam and Jody, and they were like a little bit younger than I was, and he called it Return to Jurassic Park. Remember,
Nice.
he made it in 1996. So he took clips from the movie, clips from like dinosaur shows on TV, and then had the kids running around in the woods and stuff, and made it into this little fun little movie. And that was like, oh my God, you can make your own movie. Like, it doesn't have to be a proper movie. You can just make your own movie. And so by that point, 96, I was definitely into dinosaurs and loved and I love Jurassic Park. Once I saw it on video, I think, and yeah, so it was one of those things. I guess at the time I was just a little bit too young. I don't know. Sometimes you have things when you're young that unnecessarily scare you. There's no like logic behind it. You just feel a bit tense about it for whatever reason. So
yeah, you know the opening scene in Monsters Inc. where like they're doing the test scales and the fake children and stuff. Like even that's quite scary for like a 4-year-old child. You know. I guess that kind of goes back to why I started doing YouTube videos as well. Like the thought of like having your own show, making your own film, that has always been like the trend and the interest for me of having a YouTube channel is being in control and having your own outlet to kind of talk about these things. I know you made quite a few films when you were younger. Well, I say films, but like you just whatever you were trying to, you know, do at the time. How was that? How was putting together a film with your friends? Was that something you would do often, or is that just do you only have a few memories of that?
Not as often as I would have liked, and it was the trick was getting friends to be in it. But my first film was with my cousins, and I consider them films. You know, they're not good, but they're, you know, I mean, when you set out to make something, I mean, you know, if a kid draws something in school and gives it to the parent, they're not going to go, "Oh, that's nice. It's not really a painting, though." You know, it's a painting. You know, it's maybe shit, but it's a painting, and it's the same with making a little mini film. And so I've always been oddly proud of myself because I think I was 11 and I had the idea for a film. I had the characters. I had my auntie film it, and then I edited it. You know, 11 years old, and it's, you know, it's not incoherent. You know, so,
right.
But you know, I grew up like making films like that, but not as much as I would have liked because it was difficult to get people interested in doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But,
then it just becomes this, you become the filmmaker, you know, then you've got the stress of like putting it all together and like writing it. And as you say, trying to like get people to do it and stuff like that. So that would have brought some stress, I guess. But as long as it's, you know, all in good fun and you don't take it too seriously. But at the time, something if you do like that when you're younger, it just becomes your life, you know. You can't stop thinking about it. And it's like, even in school, that was my thing. Like when I was in school, I would just think about, you know, coming home and watching wrestling and going and playing games and stuff like that. Like I couldn't stop thinking about the thing that I was most into, you know what I mean? Like I didn't have the greatest attention span, still don't, but like it was more prominent at the time, you know.
I remember at one point, like Mortal Kombat came out, the Mortal Kombat movie in 95, I think. And I just remember thinking like, I should make my own Mortal Kombat film. And I just, this really stupid idea of like, I could just have like film someone with a camera with a bunch of ice cubes in their hand. They just throw the ice cubes onto the floor and it'd be like Sub-Zero. It'd be amazing. And it's just like, you think about it now, it's like, it's just the worst thing ever. But so even before I had a camera, I was thinking about like cool things I could do for a film. The gears were always turning.
My dad had a mobile phone at the time, believe it or not, and it could do 10 minutes of video on his phone. So, and my phone couldn't do any video. So I would always have to borrow his mobile and I would film myself playing with the wrestling figures. And I'd do like my own like matches and shows and things like that. And I mean, I had my whole storyline, my whole wrestling company. But I would film some things and then I was like putting them on YouTube. And I did one with like Mick Foley and Triple H, and we had this wrestling match. It's just like, I'm probably like in my school uniform or something. And it got like thousands of views on YouTube at the time. And now thinking back to that, like first of all, who was watching that? and then two, I mean, why would I put that on YouTube, you know? But I guess it's quite charming and sweet when you think back to it. But
You're a kid. It's understandable. I did the same just without filming it. I had my wrestling figures and all that stuff. So
Yeah. Did you ever have yourself in the promotion, or did you just use the actual
yeah,
wrestlers?
but I would also look Star Wars stuff. I had loads of Star Wars toys, so I would just do like my own little adventures. I'd take Darth Vader's cape and put it on Han Solo and say, now Han Solo can fly. Just
Oh yeah,
just occupy. It's funny how I don't know, because this generation's more like, for kids who get a bit older, video games and like iPads, phones,
right.
and I hate to be that guy of like back in my day, but it's just one of those things where you would just sit in your room for hours just with a few pieces of plastic, and
Absolutely.
with your imagination create all kinds of stuff.
I definitely think I was the last generation of that old school kind of like play with your toys and go out and play, with your friends and stuff. I think I just missed the whole, social media aspect.
A little bit, but it feels like you bled over a little bit. Like you said, like your dad could film stuff on a mobile phone. I mean, when I was a kid, that was just like science fiction.
Right.
But it wasn't that far off either,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I did it because it was so new, whereas other people, I should say, even just like some of the games that were coming out at that time were so revolutionary. Like I remember playing the Spider-Man 2 PS2 game, and it was like one of the first open world games that I ever played. And the Simpsons Hit and Run game was just so incredible for me at that time. But that was just what was out at the time. I don't know what that would have been like for you, who'd maybe have played games in a couple of generations before then in terms of the consoles. I don't know what the age difference is between us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's weird because when we first started talking, you were just a kid, like, but what I found like interesting about your videos was that even though you were so young, like you had this kind of like humor about you that I found funny, and right. I liked, yeah. So no, it's just one of those weird. There's a fairly, I don't say it's a big age gap, but it's enough that it's
No, definitely not.
We certainly grew up with slightly different things, I suppose.
Yeah,
and slightly different outlooks, but
I think we also have a lot in common in terms of the films we like, and obviously wrestling was definitely the thing that we started chatting about. But I think we have very similar film tastes as well. What about when say you're going to have a movie night, right? You're going to go in, you're going to pick one of the films off your shelf that you've not seen before, you're going to make a video about it. What is the kind of ideal situation for you when it comes to watching a film from the collection? It's all the surroundings are perfect. What are you looking for?
Bullets my head, probably like 1 o'clock in the morning, just me. No distractions. I mean, I love watching films with Connie, my partner, but and it's not even that I mean, that's some of my best viewing experiences is with Connie.
Of course.
And I love watching. That's one of the main things I love doing with Connie, is watching films and stuff. And but it's kind of, when we're both watching something, we'll get snacks and then we'll want to get something else and then pause the film, we get up. It just happened tonight. We probably paused the film about 15 times for one thing or another. And so you kind of lose a little bit of the flowing experience of watching a film. Whereas if I'm on my own, I can sit there and just, lights off, get bowl of crisps or something.
Yeah.
Can of pop, nice bottle of water, cold bottle of water. And just, just that's mainly it for me. I mean, I don't know. One of the things I'm thinking of in my head when I think about that is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I watched, I guess, a year or two ago. And I was up at like 3 a.m. I just put it on, had the headphones on as well. And it was just like really immersive, and the film's like a drama that's set on like an island, but just hearing the waves crashing inside my ear and stuff. And it's dark, and there's a feeling when it's that time of night where like most people aren't up, or, most normal people who aren't night owls, and so you get this feeling that you're kind of in your own little island, kind of just totally with the film, and it's a bit more immersive than maybe watching it in the evening. And because our living room is right by the street, so in the evening you'll hear people walking past and chatting and stuff. So middle of the night, it's a bit more immersive. And
yeah, absolutely. I don't like watching movies or TV during the day. I don't know why. I can do it, but it's just I much prefer the kind of nighttime viewing.
Well, we have like semi blackout curtains, so it is possible to just shut them, and it's fine, but you still feel that it's daytime, I suppose.
Yeah. So, it's almost like going to the cinema during the day. Like you come out of the theater and like you can see out the windows, and just like that is wasted a day, really.
Or when you go in at like 4 o'clock and you come out and it's pitch black, and you're like, oh wow, okay, and I'm just disoriented.
Yeah. I don't know why. I think it all started when I was watching like really dark things, and you can see your reflection in the TV. It was just really awful.
Oh, I hate that. I hate that. It's the worst. It's oh my god, I can't stand it. Even like if you know we're watching a film at night and the lights are on, and we got these like smart things now, and it's like Alexa, dim the. Sorry for anyone who has an Alexa if they're listening to this out loud. You know, dim the lights to like 15%. You know, because I just
it's too much.
Yeah, I don't know. It bugs me.
You just see yourself like eating a sandwich or something just on the couch.
I know. Right?
It just totally takes out of the film. So, yeah, I am the same. I prefer nighttime. This actually happened when I was watching Aliens this time round. Actually, people were going to
bed. That's a film you need to watch in the dead of night. That one, yes.
Complete silence, pitch black. No, but I was watching that around, I don't know, like 10 p.m. or something. And then, you know, about an hour in, people started going to bed, you know, in my house, and it's quite a loud film, you know, especially the ending. So I put the earphones in, and I mean, what a difference! I always wish that I'd watched the whole thing like that, you know. I don't watch films a lot with headphones, and now I'm starting to think it's something I should really think about because you get the full audio experience, right?
Yeah, upstairs in my bedroom, we got a TV in there, and I hook up the headphones just if it's in the middle of the night or whatever.
Right.
But with our main TV, I don't think there's a headphone port, so I don't do it as much as I would like to. I think I've noticed with the PS4, if you put the headset into the PS4, there's like a slight delay almost.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure if it's. Maybe it's just my PlayStation. I don't know. So that bugs me. If I notice there's an imperceptible delay in the audio,
yeah.
Headphones off.
Well, I just realized that you can plug the headphones into the controller. I didn't even. Yeah. I mean, I'm only had a PlayStation for about 9 years or something, PS4 for 9 years, but I've just figured that out now. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. No, that's
because I had ones that connected, you know, Bluetooth or whatever, but I never had to do the whole plug-in thing. But life changer. Yeah. So in terms of Alien and Aliens, which was the one you saw first? Was it Aliens? Is that the one that you kind of had a softer spot for?
Yeah, Aliens for me, and here we go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the story. This is the story.
Everybody sit down.
Yeah, in fact, I'll take a sip of water on that one because I've got a lot to say. But it was for me, Aliens is like the genesis point of my movie loving life, I think.
I'm going around people, you know, this new season of The Good Bit and trying to get as many different people on as possible to kind of challenge me to watch different films and say, okay, you pick the film. And immediately when I asked Luke to come on the show, he was like, we're doing Aliens. So, I mean, we could have did Star Wars or Back to the Future, but how many times we spoke about those, you know?
Yeah, and to be completely transparent, I didn't need to watch it to then do this, you know, because I know that film so well, and it's something I could talk about quite easily. But yeah, so the story goes, I don't remember this, but it's the first film I ever saw, Aliens.
Okay.
Which is kind of like in conflict with that Jurassic Park story. But I was not even a year old. I was 0 when I saw Aliens. So my mum was watching it, and she's about 20 minutes in, and then she's like realizing that I've gone quiet, and she looks over on the sofa, and I'm just sat there like head kind of, you know, bobbing or whatever, just watching it, just transfixed by the film. And so she thought, well, he's all right then. And I sat there and watched the whole thing. So she told me that then when I was about 6 or 7. She's like, well, you know, the first film you saw was Aliens. And so I was like, well, I don't remember it. Like, can I watch it now? No, you can't watch it now. It's an 18 rated film. Of course not.
Right.
And when you're told as a kid you can't do something, what do you want to do? It became an obsession then. So like, if I was, I don't know, I recently figured this out, but I would have told you for many years that I saw Aliens when I was maybe 10 or 11 or 12, which is far too young. Well, I later worked out I must have been only about 8.
Wow.
Because I remember when Alien Resurrection, the 4th film, was coming out, which was 97, I was super excited. Like, I was watching the trailers on TV and being like, oh, God, I can't wait to see this film. And there's no way I would have had that reaction if I hadn't already seen the first 2, or 3 even. And 3 was the one that my mum didn't show me for a long time, because there's a scene of attempted rape in that film. And she's like, you can't see that. She's like, and that was my first time hearing rape, if you want a really useless piece of trivia. I was like, what does that even mean? She's like, I'll tell you later.
Yeah, so, tell you when you're older.
3 was off the table. But so I can only assume I saw Aliens first, and she relented finally when I was about, again, so 97. 8 or 9, I would say I was when I saw Aliens. And I just fell in love with it. And I don't remember ever being scared by it. I just thought it was great. And I think with the character of Newt being this young kid, I immediately latched onto that as kind of a reference point of like, you can lose yourself as a kid. Not that you really should watching this film, but I did, of like this little kid going on off with all these people and this crazy kind of fight against these alien creatures. So I remember loving her character. And from there, I think I went back and watched the first Alien, which is a bit scarier, a bit more intense. Well, I think Aliens is a bit more intense, but Alien is like more viscerally intense, like kind
Right.
of
It's kind of
very
like,
darker and
yeah, there's these slow moments and it's quite tense and stuff. Yeah, I agree with that.
scarier, that's for sure. But yeah, so and that just became this thing, and then my friends would come over to watch it because their mum and dad wouldn't let them watch it. So I kind of was there, kind of, you can come over to my house and watch it.
Yeah.
And it just throughout my life has just endured, and I just, every time I watch it, it's just like, oh yes, I can't believe I get to watch this again. It's like it's
Yeah.
probably the film I've rewatched the most, as much as I love Star Wars and stuff. Throughout my whole life, because every year or so, it's a definite rewatch.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's crazy that, like, of all the films that you've seen, the one you've rewatched the most is the first film you've ever seen. That's like almost like a full circle moment, really.
A little bit, yeah. It's I remember thinking when I was about 15, like, it should be the last film I ever watched.
That's great.
I should try and have that arranged.
Yeah, like, or at least
wheel it in.
Or at least have it playing at your funeral. At least.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's funny how many times if there's a film that you're told you can't watch, it just becomes a thing where it's like you have to see it at some point and try to like be sneaky and see it,
Yeah, well, I don't think I ever tried to like sneakily watch them, but they were like the four films on the shelf were Alien, Aliens, Terminator, and Terminator 2. And just that bright red 18 rated logo was just taunting me throughout, a couple of years of my childhood until my mum let me watch it. And that's another thing. That's another reason I love it, is because it reminds me of my mum. It's just that connection we have because it's a film that she liked, and then we both love it. We'll watch it together maybe every few years or something. Maybe not recently, but in general. And also the character Ripley reminds me of my mum. Like, she looks a little bit similar. Right. When I was a kid, she had that kind of hair, that kind of curly dark hair, and she's a very strong, determined woman. So I very strongly link Ripley with my mother in that sense. And so that just gives it like an extra layer of, love and nostalgia, I guess.
I mean, that's all you need, an immediate connection like that. And then that's you hooked on the film,
Well, I would say without that, I'd still love it as much, but it's just like it's an extra layer, on top of everything else that makes it really special.
It's a comfort film,
a little bit, I'd say, yeah.
Actually. Yeah, absolutely. This is completely unrelated, but the whole 18 thing, right? I don't have even anywhere near as exciting of a story, but the film that I want to see was The Condemned, starring Stone Cold Steve Austin. It came out in 2007, right? Because obviously I was a diehard wrestling fan. And it was an 18. I'd seen The Marine. The Marine was the first one that WWE Studios did with John Cena. And at the time, John Cena was the biggest star. Look at this. Always comes back to wrestling. So I'd seen the Marine, which was a 15, and I couldn't believe I was able to watch a 15. But I think because my mate's mum worked in Asda, so she was able to get the DVD for us. So that was the only reason I could see The Marine. But then The Condemned came out and it was an 18. So as soon as I was like, I must have been, I don't know, 13, 14, whatever. And I was, able to buy things online myself. And I started buying films for the collection on like Blu-ray and stuff. One of the first ones I bought was The Condemned because I was like, I'm watching this film, damn it. It's not great. But at the time I was like, whoa, I'm finally getting to watch the film I've always wanted to see. I wish I had a better film for that story, but it's just like The Hunger Games. That's always the argument that I put out. I don't know if you've seen The Condemned, but it's a bit like The Hunger Games.
I have. I saw it when it came out, and I can't remember hardly anything about it now. But I do remember thinking, it's like Battle Royale, Hunger Games. It had a similar kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that was, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and assume that when you turned 18, you weren't all like, yeah, let's get some booze in. Like it was, no, I was like, I want to get The Condemned. Like that's the
right. That's the first thing I did when I turned 18. Yeah, I was like, I'm going to find as many films as I could. No, in terms of my first experience watching Aliens, I was always told that Aliens was the better film. Like that was drilled into my head from my friends and my family, even when I hadn't seen the first one. I don't know if that's like a general consensus. I guess it is that it's maybe like looked at as a better received film. And I always wondered that, like, why is the sequel always looked at as the better one? Just like Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, people always talk about that one being, better. And Terminator 2, people always saying that one's better than the first one. So I always, that always interests me, like, why was it the second one? So then for a long time, especially when I was growing up, I was always like, you have to see the second film because it's always going to be better. And that's just a silly kind of mindset to have. But now looking back, I almost feel like I prefer some films that are like the first in the franchise just because of that reason. Because I was like, no, I think this one's better. And you kind of have your own opinion. You know what I mean? I don't know if you have any instances where that happened, where you were told one thing was better than the other, and I don't know if you agreed or disagreed.
Probably. I mean, there's probably been hundreds of instances of that, really. I
Of
mean,
course, yeah.
it's the constant battle of like you think to yourself, I'm not going to be influenced by anyone's opinions. I'm going to see this movie and I'm going to judge it on its own merit. And then people are like, oh, it's really bad, and you're just like, oh, maybe it is really bad. So
I'm the worst for that. I am so bad. I'm so
it's
easily
hard to
influenced.
it's hard to get those little voices out of your head, or little voice singular, where it's just like your own kind of that little voice in the back of your head. It's like, well, maybe. And yeah, so it works both ways in terms of expecting it to not be good or expecting it to be too good.
Right.
And then you have unrealistic expectations. I just watched Eternals, the recent Marvel film.
Yeah.
People said that it was dreadful. And I don't know whether that's why I enjoyed it so much, because it was a surprise. So I find it hard to even gauge, like, is it a great film? Or was it just a really good film because it wasn't as bad as everyone else said it was?
Right.
So yeah, I don't think I'll ever be able to fully free myself of that. But
I mean, the biggest thing for me is the cinema, where you're sitting, you're not speaking to anybody, and it's like, for the couple of moments where the film has ended and you're leaving the cinema, you are alone with your thoughts. This is what I thought about the film, and especially if you go to the cinema with people. But if you're going to talk to someone who didn't like the film immediately after you come out of the theater, I don't care what happens. Like, my opinion is immediately changed, and I don't know why. Like, it just I don't go from really liking the film to hating the film, but I do doubt myself and go, oh, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought. And now, maybe there's films I want to go back and watch, but oh no, but my friend didn't like it as much, so maybe I'll just miss that one. And that's not fair.
Yeah, I don't think I get that as much. The it's more the pre-influence, like before seeing the film, where I'm kind of like questioning, like, will this be as good as people say or as bad as people say? But with Aliens, I think I don't know, it's tricky. I think Aliens is a easier film to enjoy. It's an easier film to throw on and be entertained by. It's certainly the most entertaining of the first two films. But yeah, it's definitely mentioned up there with like Terminator 2 and Godfather Part 2.
Godfather, yeah.
And Empire Strikes Back, and of course The Last Jedi as the superior second film in a trilogy. But but I've always gone back and forth on that, and I think that the first two are pretty close.
Yes, I think that's what I immediately thought when I watched them on that Blu-ray set, is that I did think they were very similar. Maybe it's because it's all I know. Again, I'm not seen, the other ones, so maybe I'm just assuming, like, sometimes a couple of films run together. I think it's a bit like that. And you mentioned Eternals there. I saw Eternals twice in the cinema, and I really like it. And I thought people were really harsh on it. And I think people need to take into account that it's very difficult to introduce 8 new characters in one film and pull it off. And I thought they did a really good job.
Yeah, I've heard people say they enjoyed it more the second time around once they weren't expecting something different. And I did go back and watch the third act again. I wanted to see, I felt like there was a lot going on. So the second time I watched it and enjoyed it a lot better that time. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're a big One Direction fan or anything, but the moment at the end where Harry Styles appears, that was a big moment in the cinema when I was there. People were freaking out.
Yeah. I don't want to like maybe overstate it, but I'm probably the biggest One Direction fan in the world.
I thought so.
Yeah. So it was that was who is he again?
Harry Styles is his name.
Harry Styles. Yeah.
Yes.
That was cool.
Yeah, that was.
Did he voice that little troll guy at the end, didn't he?
Well, here's the story for this. So my sister is the biggest One Direction fan in the world, and I was seeing it with my sister.
I know who he is. I know Harry Styles.
No, I know. But we were watching Eternals, and she had heard about Harry Styles being in the film because she obviously follows all the One Direction stuff on Twitter and stuff. And
they leaked it really early. Yeah.
Oh, did they? I mean, I had no clue.
As soon as the film was premiered, before it was even released in general cinemas, some journalist was like, so Harry Styles shows up at the end, and people are like, what are you doing? Like, you've been shown the... Yeah, and it was... Yeah, so it was almost pretty common knowledge before the film came out.
Well, somehow I didn't know. And obviously, like, I do like some One Direction songs, and obviously with the link up of my sister being there, it was just like this nice moment. But the credits started rolling on Eternals, and I just pulled out my phone, and I went on IMDb, and I don't know why. I think I was wanting to look how long it was and stuff, and I was scrolling through the cast. And I saw Harry Styles' face on IMDb, and I was sitting, like, I just didn't say anything. I was just having a moment thinking, maybe like voiced over something, or maybe I missed him, but I was like, surely like even like my sister would have reacted. And she kind of saw I was on IMDb, and she was like, what are you doing? Get off your phone, because she wanted me to have that surprise. And I'd already seen who he is. And then obviously the post-credit scene starts and there's this character kind of coming out of this realm thing. And I was like, oh my God, this is the moment. And I just wish I didn't look, it's almost like Spider-Man, the new Spider-Man film. I was just waiting for people to show up.
Yeah.
Not to spoil anything, but I think it's the worst kept secret ever. But anyway, let's get back to the film we were chatting about. So yes, when I first saw Aliens, again, I kind of went in with that predetermined idea that, Aliens are going to be better. And it's not that I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I always just had a preference for the first one because it's the first one I watched. It's the first one in the series. And I think there was a long gap between when I watched them. I watched Alien the day I got the Blu-ray and then maybe waited a couple of months and then went back to the second one, which happens, all the time. And I guess I just always talked about the first one. And then, my dad prefers the second one. So he would always mention the second one. So I guess I have that kind of connection with him. But I've seen the first one more. I've only seen the second one about 3 times. And this time watching it now for the podcast was my favorite time that I watched it. And I wonder if it's because it's like, now I'm well aware of what's happening. And the way like you're not sitting there in the total unknown, you kind of have an idea where the story's going and the parts you like and the actors you like and stuff and the characters you have a soft spot for. You kind of enjoy films when you watch them a couple more times, I don't know if you agree with that, but that's something I like to do a lot,
Yeah, definitely. But then, just as you get older, both in terms of like who you are as a person, you're going to receive a film differently, but also the more films you watch, I think the more you start to calibrate what you like in films and recognize things more. Like, maybe 10 years ago, I thought I was pretty good at talking about films on YouTube, and I definitely wasn't. Maybe I was competent and could drag myself through it, but I look back now and I'm like, Jesus Christ. So it just evolves over time, I think. And if you're a film fan, I think you're going to be looking at certain things and saying, oh, that performance was good. And then you start to think, and obviously with you and acting and stuff, but just in general, I think that the more stuff you see, the more you realize what works and what doesn't. Totally. So when you go back to an older film, you might see, oh, that bit really works. I've never noticed that before. So that's probably part of it too, I think.
Totally. James Cameron directing this film. I know you're a big fan. When you did your James Cameron marathon this past year, was it last year? Yeah, it was last year on your channel.
March 2021.
Jesus, that's almost a full year. That doesn't seem very long ago when you were posting those videos. If, for those who don't know, Luke did a series on his channel where he reviewed every James Cameron film, right? It was everyone he did. How was that, going through all of his films, and how did Alien hold up next to all of his kind of other big ones?
Aliens was the only film I didn't watch for this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to waffle on about it too long and promote my own shit, but like it was a series where I did 31 videos, so all of March, and this is a guy who has an 7 film filmography. So it was a deep dive. So there's like, one day I was talking about the behind the scenes stories of like Terminator getting made. And then the next video I'd be talking about my review of Terminator, etc., etc. And there's documentaries that he's made. There's like his Spider-Man film that never got released. So I kind of tried to do a massive deep dive on everything, just discussing it and nothing fancy. And with Aliens, I did a trilogy of videos, and I think it's about 3 hours with all 3 of them, and it's just me talking about the making of the film. So it's not even really a review. It's just like the behind the scenes story of how it came together. And then the second video is like how it was when they were filming it. And then the third one was like finishing it and the release and the legacy of it and that kind of thing. So, yeah. But that whole series was really fun to do. It took 6 months to put together, but it felt nice to do like a proper series again after a long time.
Yeah, I do like when you do like a series, like not just your channel, but like any channel, when they have like a consistent, like everyday thing, It's almost to the point where I like to do that because, as I said earlier on, it gives you that outlet to talk about whatever you want. But there's something really refreshing and satisfying about having the one theme, like doing someone's whole filmography is really admirable. And I'd quite like to go back and watch, like pick an actor, for example, and just watch every single one of their films. Like I've never done that before. And it's something I'd quite like to do. I don't know who I'd pick, but let's even, the directing thing would be good because the films are always going to be different. I wonder how different the films would be if you're picking an actor, who would you pick if you were going to go and watch every film an actor has done? Have you got anyone that you would go? I know, you did Michael Keaton, right?
Yeah.
Okay, other than Michael Keaton, we'll forget Michael Keaton. He doesn't exist.
Well, it's funny, yeah. So I did that in 2013. It's like almost 10 years ago. And I had the same thought as you, like, what if I just watched every film he's ever done? He's my favorite actor. And you do see this wild kind of variety of quality of films for sure.
Right.
but you see a consistency of like, the stuff that he does. And I'm actually now thinking about doing a sequel to that series next year for the 10-year anniversary, because 10 more years of films have been released.
Jeez.
So that should be fun. And he's playing Batman like twice this year, so
yeah,
there'll be a lot to talk about. I have thought of others. There's people like Robin Williams who I'd like to see everything of, and there's quite a few really. I think Robin Williams probably is one, because he had a really varied career.
Yeah, that's a good show.
Like comedy dramas, like slapstick comedies, and then like straight dramas, psychological thrillers. Like he did quite a broad mix throughout the whole of his career. So that would probably be a good one to do, I think.
Yeah. When I asked the question, I was thinking the first person that came to mind was DiCaprio, but I don't know why, because he's done so many films, but I've seen probably most of them, including Titanic, which I watched for the first time like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
For the first time. What did I think? It's it's great. It's a great film. And the way, like, I don't know why I'd never watched it. I think it was the length of the film, which I'm very guilty of. If you see a long film, you go, okay, maybe not tonight or whatever, and it just keeps happening. And also because, you hear all these things about it, like it's the greatest film ever made and stuff like that, and just never wanted to dive into that. That's a terrible pun, diving into it. But also, just the thought of, I think I saw a clip on some form of like trailer or something like that, where like the clip of the boat, in the film, and that was just so intriguing to me. And I was like, you know what, this is going to be the year that I watch it. And yeah, I loved it. I loved the fact that they just, they did everything. It's not as if it's like you just hear the characters that you learn about, and then when the ship goes down, that's the end of the film. You see, the aftermath and stuff. I didn't even know the film was a flashback, until I started watching the film. And I like that because it's such a well-known film. It's, an iconic film, and I just hadn't seen it before. So I'm running out of those, but I think there's a few left that I'm still to get to.
I'm sure there's plenty.
Yeah,
there's always going to be something. That was another early cinema memory for me. I went to see it with my nan and a bunch of people from the old people's home that she worked with, and so it was me and a bunch of old women went to see that film.
Nice.
And that was just like, and that was, speaking of age ratings, because that was rated 12 when it came out. And so I was so 90. Was it 90? When did that come out? 97, I think.
97,
so I was 10. And I remember going back to school after the break or whatever, and telling people I'd seen Titanic, and all the girls were really jealous because, actually, they were so jealous that they just said, "You're lying, you didn't see it," because they really wanted to see Leo DiCaprio, like he was the big heartthrob of that year. So like, they just couldn't believe I'd seen a 12 rated film, which is funny thinking back on it. But that's Titanic is, and you're talking about films improving and stuff. When I rewatched Titanic for that Cameron series, that was the most I've ever enjoyed it, probably. And the most I've been emotionally affected by it. Like, I've always thought that it was a emotional film and effective, but it really choked me up at the end. And I thought, where is this coming from? Like, but I think I found that getting older as well, that my emotions are a bit different. So I get more easily swayed by stuff.
That probably happens when you watch more films too. You find yourself affected by different things, and series, like when you get connected to characters, more in TV shows. I feel like I get more emotionally connected to characters in TV shows, probably just because there's more development in them and stuff. But I never really tend to find myself getting emotional at a film, but I can see myself getting emotional. Like, I just watched Afterlife on Netflix. I watched the 3rd season, and I loved it, and I was like really emotional at the end of it. I'm not like a crier. I just don't do it. So that was a big one for me. I couldn't believe that I was getting so emotionally connected to Afterlife. What was the last thing you watched, by the way? That was another question I was going to ask you. The last thing was on your TV.
The Karate Kid Part 2. So speaking of series, I've been watching Cobra Kai a lot.
Oh man, I'm desperate to get to it, but I want to rewatch the films again.
So we're currently doing this year's movie marathon, which is like we're spreading out over a long period of time because we have limited time.
Right.
But so we're doing the Karate Kid trilogy. So that was the last one I watched, was Part 2, which was fun to go back to.
Nice.
I mean, that question changes very frequently. Well, I mean, I try and watch as much as I can, but
yeah, and you're quite active on Letterboxd as well, like me. You more so than me. I don't have a pro account. What is your username on Letterboxd? Is it just RazorwireReviews?
RazorWire Ryan. So yeah,
nice. I saw you posted a video earlier today, though. What was that about?
So I'm just calling it the Letterboxd Around the World Challenge. It doesn't really, I mean, it's linked to Letterboxd because when you have a pro account, you get like stats, like, which is really, I mean, I like stats and lists and nerdy
Yeah, me
film
too.
shit like that. So
Yeah.
it gives you a rundown of like who are the actors you've watched the most this year, who are the directors, and it's constant. So it's like you don't have to wait till the end of the year. It's constantly updating itself. But at the bottom there's a world map, and it's like all the countries are grey, and the ones that you've seen films from are green. And I noticed that at the end of 2021, there was like this just very grey looking map. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to just color that in for 2022 and try and just really broaden the world cinema kind of viewing. So that was just
good idea.
It's a great idea. It's a fun thing. It has some good comments about it so far. So it's something to kind of push people into different areas, because there are often really good experiences in world cinema. But, you know, even me, I mean, I love all sorts of films, but, you know, I'm definitely more inclined to watch an American kind of, you know, mainstream film, because it's just like, it's easier to digest, I suppose. So but it's nice to push yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking as well. You know, like I'm very easily manipulated into what I'm going to watch. So I find it hard to pick myself. So sometimes it's nice to go, okay, we'll just watch this. But yeah, even with this whole new idea with the podcast, like getting other people to pick the films, that's hopefully going to push me to do it. So you're actually my second guest so far. I had another actress on, Madeline McGurk, last week, and she her favorite film is Legally Blonde. And I was like, I've never seen it. You know, let's watch it. It's just not something I would have ever watched. And, you know, I enjoyed it and stuff. We had the chat last week. But yeah, so that's like, I'm hoping it's not also another American film, but I'm hoping like some films that people are going to pick, it's going to be quite varied. And I don't mind when it's, you know, just American films or British films or whatever, but even just different decades and different generations and stuff. Yeah. Even that's good enough for me, you know, just to kind of, you know, films change so much over the years, you know. So, but we've really.
Or even different genres.
You know? Right, exactly. Yeah.
Because I about a year or two ago, I watched Mean Girls for the first time.
Still never seen it.
And it's just one of those things that everyone's like, oh, people talking about like it's a masterpiece. I'm like, come on, it's Mean Girls. Like, yeah, I know what this film, and I watched it. I thought that was brilliant. Like, I love that. Like, and it's just like, never would have expected it. So, you know, it's not limited to, you know, going outside of America or whatever. But there's certainly like you can push yourself to watch different things, and that's kind of fun.
That's all I hear about.
Especially when something's really good, and you're like, oh, that surprised me. That's a good film.
It's like a pleasantly surprised. That's all I hear about with Mean Girls, is that, oh my god, I didn't expect it to be as good as it was.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah, that was the same with me with Crazy Stupid Love. I don't know if you've seen that film.
Oh,
with like Steve Carell. I was like, I'm not going to watch this film, and then it was like on the plane. We were going on holiday, and I watched it on the plane, and I was like, oh my god.
I saw that in the cinema when it came out. I've never seen it since, but I remember just thinking it was brilliant. So I need to see that again.
Yeah. We've hardly spoke about aliens, but I'll just throw a few names at you, and you can let me know what your thoughts, not just in this film, but if you know anything else about the actors. Obviously, the main star, Sigourney Weaver, which is hilariously said in my accent, Sigourney Weaver.
I recently found out that's not her name, and I was like heartbroken.
Really?
I was like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a stage name. Yeah.
Wait, hang on, let me do this. Christ, how do you spell Sigourney?
Sigourney. But I mean, she's one of my favorite actresses purely based on the Alien films. I just love her performances in all four of them. So yeah. But I mean, did you see the theatrical or the special edition version?
Theatrical. I know this happened before, but here's the thing: I had the choice of which one, and I thought it's better to watch the one that everybody saw for the first time. You know.
In this case, you chose wrong. No, okay. So I mean, it is interesting. I would say that a few things in the extended cut are maybe not essential, but there's one scene that is like really massive. So I'm assuming you've never seen the extended cut.
No, maybe I will now you've spoken about it.
Yeah, so right at the beginning, after she's woken up after 57 years, you see her sat in this garden with like these trees and stuff. And then it pans out and you realize it's just a video wall to kind of make it seem like she's on Earth. And then Burke comes in and he's like, oh yeah, I looked up your daughter. You know, she died a couple of years ago and stuff, and gives her the picture. And he's looking at her daughter, and it's an old woman. And it's actually a photo of Sigourney Weaver's mother. And
really?
And you know, she's devastated, you know, and she says, you know, when you think back to the first film, she's like, I told her I'd be back for like her 11th birthday.
Yeah.
Or something like that, you know, and so that was a scene that Sigourney Weaver was really, she liked that scene a lot. So when the film came out and it wasn't in the movie,
man,
she was like, I based my whole performance on that scene. Like for her, that was the whole thing. It was this mother who lost her daughter,
right,
through such a strange, unthinkable circumstance, and then finds, you know, a surrogate daughter in Newton. So that's a scene that you almost can't go without, really. But
so why would they cut it then?
Timing. It was purely
Right.
this thing where they wanted to get a certain amount of showings per day. It was kind of a
Okay.
and then there's a huge sequence where you see the colony before the alien attack.
Oh,
And that's a
really?
pretty lengthy sequence of like you see all the workers and stuff, and then you see the Newt and her family go off in a truck to the alien ship, and you see her parents' fate and stuff. And so that was a big cut that they took out. But I don't
Wow.
mind not seeing that because I like the mystery of just, even though I know what happens, but it's nice when they just arrive at the buildings and it's like all
Yeah.
derelict, like what happened here? What was it like here? So, but yeah, that scene with her and her daughter, finding out about her daughter is pretty,
Okay.
essential.
I'm sold. That's something to go watch. Her name is Susan, which I did not expect.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there you
Well,
go.
it's striking. I get it. So
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, a name like Sigourney, I guess people remember more. I don't know.
yeah,
My favorite scene in the film is when they first arrive, the Marines and Ripley first arrive, and they just kind of start having banter and things like that. And I read that, like, I think I read on the IMDb trivia page that like, they filmed that last or something to like because they wanted them to have that camaraderie of being together and working on the film to come across on the screen. The fact that they are, Marines that have been together or whatever, So that was my favorite scene, just seeing them all kind of, because she knows what's coming, but they all don't, and I like that aspect of it. Of course, the final scene is incredible as well, and that was the scene that my dad told me about when I was just a wee boy. And obviously, the word bitch is used, and he didn't want to say the word bitch when he was telling me about the film, like at the time. So, like, when he told me about the quote, he stopped before the word bitch, and I had was left in suspense. I was like, one day when I watch this film, I'm going to hear what that word is.
I imagine if there was like a TV edit, it'd probably be like, "Get away from her, you witch," something like that.
I thought you were going to. That would make sense. I thought you were going to say something like you doofus or something.
No,
No.
they do try and vaguely match it on those TV cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that well, I know that they did a lot of like military kind of training before making the film,
Right.
but also Apone, the sergeant, he was an actual Vietnam veteran, so he like immediately slipped into that role of like literally being like the leader of that group of actors and characters in the film.
I love Lance Hendrickson's character, the CGI character. Well, no CGI, but the what's the word?
AI?
AI, yeah, no CGI.
Is that where you're going? Is this Android? Yeah, CGI.
That would be weird. Having the CGI character in 1986. But yeah, I thought he was great. Bishop was his name, and I thought he was a great character. But I totally had forgotten about him really until I rewatched this for this time, and I was just like, yeah, it's such an important part of the film, and he kind of saves the day in some ways at the end.
Yeah, well, they very much play into the whole the paranoia of Ash in the first film, the android who just turns out to be a raving psychopath, and so they Cameron very cleverly plays with that throughout the film. Well, I guess if you're watching it for the first time, where those little seeds of doubt, like what's that bishop really up to? Like,
right,
he's a bit sinister, but he's just an android who doesn't have great social skills.
Yeah, exactly. Billy me. I love the music in the film too. I think the music's brilliant. It's something that I totally looked over as well. But once I put the earphones in, you get the full experience. And I don't even know who composed it.
James Horner, who also did the music for Titanic, and it was a really stressful collaboration. Like it didn't go well with the Cameron and James Horner because there was a lot that was rushed. Like, so that big like cue towards the end when she's flying away and like the whole planet's about to blow up, and it's like dun dun dun. There's a really dramatic. Like he pulled that out of his ass in like one night. Like it was so like, and so they were like, well, we're not working together again. But then 10 years later, they kind of were like, okay, we're both young and a bit kind of hot-headed. Let's do something else. And they did Titanic, and the score for that is beautiful as well. I think he might have done Avatar as well, but yeah, it's a great score. And to bring it back around to wrestling, because there's always a way to bring it around to wrestling.
Yeah.
And if you know this, I'm trying to think when it was. It might have been Armageddon 2000, the 6-man Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah,
the hype video uses Aliens music, the score from Aliens.
Know that
the cue when she's flying away, and it's like dun 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 dun, and they use that with like just clips of earlier Cell matches. I think it's that one. If not, it's definitely a Hell in a Cell hype package that, at least originally, it probably isn't on the network anymore. But I remember when it came out on video, I was like, "That's the Aliens!" Like, where did that come from? I don't know whether they just were playing loose with copyright and someone just had the copy of the VHS and we're just use this.
Yeah, to be fair, around that time they were doing lots of things like that, weren't they? Like they were having like Kid Rock and stuff like that, and Limp Bizkit, and they were just doing it, Motorhead. But at least they paid for the copyright for those songs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just a completely random thing. It's like when I watched some reality show once, and it was, they used your generic rock music for
Yeah, yeah.
the bits in between the whatever bullshit's going on, and then like during one episode, it was the Hardy Boys theme. And I'm just like,
You know,
the
I think I
WWE just
recognize
like
that too.
they're just licensing out like, oh, well, the Hardy Boys aren't with us anymore. Let's just like sell it to reality TV show corporations or something.
Yeah. Someone in the UFC came out to Kurt Angle's theme song recently as well.
Wow. Okay.
With an American flag around his shoulders. Taking the character as well. But anyway, this is not the wrestling podcast. But yeah, any last words on Aliens? Anything that what does Aliens mean to you? I know you kind of touched on it earlier, but to round it all off.
Well, yeah, it's one of my absolute favorite films. It'd been probably in the top 3 area at least. For a while, it was my number 1, but it always oscillates around the top 3, top 5.
It's sitting on number 74 right now on IMDb's top 250.
That's surprising. I mean, it was critically received well, but I will say, unlike the debate of which is the best of the first 2, I think the first film's the best.
Right.
To me, it's just every time I go back to the first one, which is also a lot. That's another film I can watch a lot. There's just something, I don't know. There's something about that one that is really so well done in almost every. It's so well executed in almost every single way. And Aliens is similar, but and even Cameron has said this, that there are raw kind of rough around the edges parts to Aliens, but I think the original Alien is pretty near flawless. But Aliens, it's a different flavor, and I love that about it. That it doesn't just like let's do Alien again, but on like a planet. It's kind of different. It's a war movie. It's like so it's a different tone. It tells a different story. It focuses around around Ripley and her kind of motherhood, and so there's more of a theme to it and more of an emotional connection than the first film, which is kind of just a horror movie, as they say, a haunted house movie in space.
Yeah.
But I think it just makes for a good 1-2 punch. Like people, which one's the best? Why not just watch both?
Watch both. Yeah, exactly.
And then you have the third film and the fourth film, which are interesting to say the least, but pretty much the same as Terminator. I kind of stopped watching it, Aliens. So
okay.
I'll stop with the sequel that Cameron directed. But even though I like all the other Terminator sequels, I like the Alien sequels. I prefer kind of just riding off into the sunset with Aliens as the last part of the story.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm more than happy to watch the other 2, and we can do episodes on them, even if it's just for YouTube. But we can definitely do something.
Yeah. It's I mean, there are good things about the 3 and 4, but they're just very almost too different, I would say. Well, I don't know, it's difficult. There are people who really love Alien 3.
Right.
And there has been a newer version of it done that kind of works a lot better than the original version. And that is tricky for people like you, or even like me, seeing films sometimes who we haven't seen them before. And it's like, okay, so there's this version. You want to go with that version there, which was released in 1957. But this one has the aspect where it's like, you get kind of caught up, and it's like, and I get what you mean. Like, I want to watch it the way that it was put out in cinemas. But that might be a way that the director didn't want it to be released in the first place. And then and then you got to look into it, and then you have to do research. And
obviously, there's a special edition, but you can watch that one later, just like everybody else did. The special edition came out later,
Yeah.
So I will do that. I'll watch the other 2, and then we can chat about them. And we can even do an episode on the first one. I know that would kind of go backwards, but there's no reason why we couldn't chat about the first one as well. But thank you very much for coming on. I'd obviously, this new kind of format with getting different people on. The idea is to get people on more than once, so if there's any other films that we can discuss, I'll give you a shout and you can jump back on.
Yeah, that's all right.
And anybody who's listening who's not subscribed to Luke's channel, that's probably not the case, but you can check him out on YouTube, RazorwireReviews. You can see me on YouTube at CM42 TV. Tune in next time, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Good Bit Podcast. We'll see you all down the road, and take care of yourselves, everybody.